Welcome back once again to yet another video. If you're new to this channel, do subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment if possible. Okay, so in the last video we looked at arrays and the map function. So in this video we're going to look at functions and how they work. Okay, so what are functions? Functions are just a set of statements that perform a specific task or return a single value. Okay, so we're going to dive into VS Code and just be able to look at how we can write functions and how functions work in JavaScript. Okay, so we're now in VS Code. So I'm going to create a folder. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder, then we'll name this folder function. Okay, so inside this folder, we're going to create a variable called, just call it functions. Okay, let me just rename this as well so that we keep it pro functions. Okay, so inside this folder we have a file called functions.js. Okay, so whatever code we write in here is the one that we're going to use to execute in the terminal. All right, so let me just go back a bit. Okay, create a function. Okay, yeah, so we do have a folder now, so it's showing, we do have a file called functions.js inside this folder. Okay, so now we can get started writing our code. Right, so there are many different ways that you can write functions in JavaScript, and the first one is by using a keyword called function. Right, then after you write the keyword function, you now write the name of the function. Right, so you give it a name, which is greet in our case, right? Then after the name, you write these open brackets, close brackets, then you use the curly brackets as the block of code. So in the curly brackets, that's where we write our block of code, that's where we put our statements, right, that will perform a specific task, right? So to just keep it simple, we're just going to print something rather to the terminal, right? So here we're just going to say hello, right? Just say hello world, then we can put that. Okay. We put a comma here, all right, like that. So when we save the function and we run the code, let's see what will happen when we do that. Okay, it hasn't printed anything. Why is that? Right? It's because for us to run a function, we need to call it, right? So that's how functions work in JavaScript. When you write a function, you need to call it. You need to invoke it for it to run, right? So how do you do that? So we call the function by its name, right? So we say greet, then you open the brackets. When you just write the name, it won't do anything. So we open the brackets and we close it like that. Let's also close this just to be consistent. Okay, then when we save our work and run the program again, you notice that this time it's doing what? It's now printing. Okay, so we go to the second method. Okay, so the second one is you create a function more like it's a variable, right? We looked at variables, so we do understand now what variables are. So if you didn't watch the video on variables, go through the channel and you'll be able to find the video on variables. Okay, so this is the greet function, which is the name, right? Then we have this equal to, then the brackets, then here you put equal to and greater than symbol like that. That's how you write the arrow function, right? So this is called an arrow function. It still does the same thing, and the way you call the function is still the same. So you just say greet, then you open the brackets. So we save the work. So when you run the program now, you still get to print hello world, right? No difference, right? So the third one, it's a bit different because we don't give it a name, right? That's why it's called the anonymous function, right? So to just give you an example of the anonymous function, we're going to use the set interval function, right? So with the set interval function, it allows us to put in a function, right? So when we have a function and it's receiving a parameter, okay? So these brackets that you're seeing here, right? They do receive what we call parameters, right? Or variables, right? So when these variables or parameters are functions, we call them callback functions, right? So when this function is called, right, what it does is it first executes the function that it receives as a parameter. All right. So an example of that is we would put a function like that. Okay. Then at the end of the function, right? So it receives two parameters. It receives a callback function, then it receives a time interval, right? So here when we put 1000, it's microseconds. So 1000 microseconds is equals to 1 second, right? So we just put, okay, we leave it as 1 second, right? So every 1 second it execute the code which is inside here, right? This is a function and I'll explain, right? If you look at this, you remember that it's similar to the arrow function, right? And it is the arrow function, right? So inside these brackets, that's where we write our code, right? Remember, you always write the code inside the curly brackets. Okay? So we're going to print hello world again, like that. Okay. Right. So save our work. Now, remember, we said for a function to run, you need to call it. Now, this is an anonymous function, and with the set interval, it's already called, right? Because we said for us to call a function, what do? You call the name of the function, you open the brackets, and it will run, right? Okay, so when we run the function, let's clear the console first, okay, and run the function. Okay. So you notice every 1 second, it will keep printing. Why? Because it's a time interval function, right? So every 1 second, it will print what's inside, or it will execute the code that's inside here every 1 second. Okay. So we can just close the terminal like that. You can just stop it. Okay, right? So now we're talking about the anonymous function. So where is the anonymous function here, right? So the anonymous function that we're talking about is this one, the arrow function, right? In this case, we are not writing the function like this. We're not writing cost, but we're just writing it without a name, right? So when a function is written without a name, it's called the anonymous function. Another way that you would write this function is by writing the function keyword and opening the curly brackets like that, right? And it still works. You've seen we haven't written any name here, right? We haven't given it any name. So we need save the work and run the program. Okay. Sorry. And run the program, you see that it's still working, right? It's still working. So this is the anonymous function, right? You can actually move this from here and write a function with a name like this, okay? And call the function here, right? Like that. Now remember, here you don't need to put the brackets like that because this function is already being executed, right? The set interval. So once the set interval is being executed, it will go to this function and run this code. Okay. So let me stop that program, then run it again. Okay. You see, so it will still do the same thing like that. Okay. That's the function that we're talking about. Okay, but for an anonymous function, remember always we can always put it there. So you can't write an anonymous function here. Okay, you can't write an anonymous function, it will give you an error there. Okay, so this function can only work if it's inside here as a parameter like that. Okay. Yeah. So the other thing that we look at is parameters. We mentioned we talked about something to do with parameters, right? So let's write a simple function. Here we write the same function greet, but this time we're passing a name to the parameter, the function rather, passing a name, right? Then we'll print this name by greeting the person here. So just say hello, okay? Leave a space there. Then for us to join the two, just put a plus there to join the two strings. Right? So we'll pass a string, which is a name. Then this line of code will join hello and the name that will pass, so that if the name of the person, let's say it's Ben, they need to say hello Ben, right? Okay, so now we can call the function by its name, right? But this time, the only difference is we now have to pass a string. We now have to pass the name to the function, right? So if, let's say we put Ben there and we save our work, hello console. Okay, we run the program, it will say hello Ben, like that. Okay, if you change here, you say Joshua, for example. Okay, you say Joshua. Okay, you can even add an exclamatory mark like that. Okay, this time when you put Joshua, it will say hello Joshua, like that. Okay, another way you can actually put this together by using the back quotes, those double quotes, single quotes. Okay, so when you do that, you say hello. Okay, hello. Then you use the dollar sign, the scale brackets, then you can now put the name of the variable and the exclamatory mark like this. Okay, to just reduce on the number of characters that we're writing. Okay, so when we run the program, still do the same thing. Just print hello Joshua. So this is a video on functions, and this is how functions work.